take out, do 2025 minus 1991. That's some good number of years. And we're talking about sustainability here. So please, I would urge that you take lessons, draw lessons from him. Please pay attention to. So I'll just go over to you, sir. I would ask the next question. Can you share examples of how startups in your field have successfully innovated around customer pain points in tough economic times, just like in Nigeria right now?
Yes, thank you, Ekemini. My name is Emeka, and I'm a co-founder at a fintech startup. So, I think I have a good way to, I have the good experience, questions about pain point and innovating around problems. But before we talk about the pain points and innovating around these problems, I think two events in the last 6 years are very, very important to how fintech has shaped Nigeria. Though the first event was COVID. COVID shaped how fintechs did things in Nigeria. And then the second time was when we had the cashless crunch. These two events were what pushed two startups out to come out in prominence and then changed the way the Nigerian banking system was working. Now, before 2020 or 2019, if I say the name OPay or MoneyPoint, it won't ring a bell in your head. Before 2019, because at that point, they were still early stage. I think MoneyPoint was team app at that point. OPay, I don't think they had even entered the market with this kind of dominance at that point. But then, two of them took advantage of these two scenarios to push themselves out. Now, let me give the first example, the cashless time, which is when all of us saw their relevance. Now, during the cashless, when we could not have cash due to the Nigerian's regulations at that time, OPay became extremely important, right? How did it become important? Now, the banks before that time had not witnessed that kind of volume in transactions, right? Everybody had to go to use their bank apps, their internet banking, and because they don't have that kind of volume, systems were overloaded and systems were failing consistently. So that was one pain point that customers had at that point, right? Then aside that issue at that time, so if anybody here has worked with the fintech system, you understand that interbank transfers are controlled by a body called NIBS. NIBS had problems because they were overloaded as well at that particular point in time. Now, the problem with banks, and why banks are not as good as fintech in the technology space, is that banks are old, banks are big. If you've worked with a bank before you can get something to work, you have to have about 1,000 appraisals. But fintechs are very fast. Fintechs, if you say something before the next 2 weeks, you've already implemented it. By fintech, as we are sleeping, before you even wake up, we've implemented it because we are fast. We don't need to go through 1 million appraisals or things like this. So fintech scale their infrastructure massively, right? Good. Now, OPay and MoneyPoint did something that put them at the back of everybody's mind. Now, there's word on the street that OPay has sub-accounts with most tier 3 banks or tier 1 banks. All the banks, they have sub-accounts there. So before you do your own transaction and wait for NIBS to happen, then they will let the transaction go through and then they'll settle internally with the bank. So that's why everybody has this sense of confidence that if I do a transaction with OPay and MoneyPoint, within 1 minute, everything will go through. But if you use regular banks don't go through. And then you ask yourselves, how do these regular banks, this incompetent? It's not their fault, they're using NIBS. But okay, OPay is so smart. They have a lot of funding backing them. So they have sub-accounts word on the street. They have sub-accounts with all these major banks. So before you do the transfer, they've already settled it and then you can see your money in your bank to do your transaction. So that was one major pain point that they iterated around very, very quickly. And then people built some confidence in them, right? And then Kuda did something nice in 2021. Kuda, they called themselves the Bank of the Free. Now they did something nice where they said, okay, people are always complaining that transaction charges are very expensive. Let's remove all transaction charges. So they removed all their transaction charges. And then this is on that way they started pressing the neck of regular banks as well. But up until I think it was 2022, the CBN had to step in and say, no, you have to pay stamp duty for amounts over 10,000 naira, you have to do this because they had to regulate the whole body. So these are ways they say, okay, Nigerians are complaining, charges are too much, let's take care of this. Oh, there's no cash in the economy, how can we make people get their money as fast as possible? And also, I will not also not be devoid of the fact, or not say the fact that these people are very, very funded. OPay has a lot of funding. Kuda has a lot of funding, so that's why they can, play these kind of roles. And then also talking about MoneyPoint, how did MoneyPoint solve people's problems? Now, when the federal government had the whole cashless policy, and then banks don't have enough to disburse, MoneyPoint had already positioned themselves as the #1 agency banking solution. So this meant that people don't have to go to banks anymore, and then they had to use the agency banking to, get their funds. Even though I know the bank, CBN has just released a regulation now that has reduced the effect of banking agency market. I don't know if everybody has seen the new release from CBN now. So CBN has said now that every agent must have only just one POS, right? But it's how the industry is. But those are like some examples of how some people have said, okay, this is the problem Nigerians are going through. We have the money, let's solve the problems. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. One thing was constant. They understood the pain points of every Nigerian. They didn't just go into the market and say, hey, I want to build because I want to build. Or I want to build because I want to compete with the old generation banks. They understood one thing, the pain point, and give it 10 years. Give it the next 10 years, OPay and MoneyPoint, and every other fintech banks, nobody would come close. Why? Because you understood one thing, understanding the pain points of your customers. Okay, so we'll just go on to the next question. I don't know, is Mrs. Ifeanyi on the line? Okay, so we'll just go ahead to the next question. So I'll come back to you on the next question. So how can startup ensure that not just chasing investments, but building real value?
Okay, I'll continue where I stopped. In construction business, there are resources that we leverage on. You leverage on personnel expertise, you leverage on equipment, you leverage on casual resources and materials. The way to go is to first of all identify your customer-centric approach. Like in construction, an example, because I want you to take some home, not just giving you literary studies. What you need to take home, I want an example. Like what we call the labor market at Artisan, Obomano. You know that labor market is a lot of skilled and unskilled labor. And these people are supposed to service our industry. That place creates an unparalleled opportunity for what we, construction industry, has been looking for. Who will go there and organize that market, the labor market. You can find out what our needs are, and I can make that simple to you. We need to be able to get skilled masons. We need to be able to get skilled carpenters. We need to be able to get skilled laborers, as it were, of iron benders and fitters. But the problem is that when we get to that market, we are inundated with unskilled people. So how are you going to organize them? You can set up platforms, digital platforms, where you begin to register some of these casuals. You can take them in teams or in groups, register them, help also to train them, organize them as a labor force. And by a simple login to your platform, we can request for so skilled people. This is what our own industry is begging for, because we are trying to build up startups that are resilient, startups that are reliable, that you can scale. So if I need to build a structure, I know I know the number of laborers I need. I will simply log on to your website and say, please, I need a supply of 5 carpenters, a crew of 5 carpenters. I need a supply of a crew of 10 laborers and a crew of 15 masons. And without going to that market to go and recruit all sorts of people who come to destroy the progress that we make, you are giving me service. So by applying yourself to know the demand of your intended clientele, that's being customer-centric, you'll be able to build up a resilient business that will give real value. And that real value is to make sure that we get quality, well-trained, skilled, and unskilled labor force on demand.
Thank you so much, sir. So I don't know how many of you have heard of the recent collapse in buildings in Lagos State. You've seen buildings that are collapsing every day, and then when you meet the engineer on site, they'll be like, oh, maybe there were no the cement they were using, maybe they didn't, you know, those very local unskilled people that they pick on the roadside. And then at the end of the day, you see that these problems keep repeating itself. Like you put in a lot of millions to build a lot of houses, and then give it 6 months, 1 year, you begin to see cracks on the wall. And then before you know it, the building collapses. It killed, I remember the one that happened in some time ago that killed very prominent people. And then at the end of the day, where does it boil down to? Unskilled laborers. People that you just pick on the wayside because they call them engineer. I call them engineer without a certificate. Now, don't get me wrong, we have very skilled and talented ones, but how do you even identify the very real ones? And so that is what he's talking about, giving people value. So building apps that can bring all these people into one place. Just like your Google map, you can just search in Enugu State to see where can I get so and so restaurants in Enugu State, and then it takes you to some places that it has picked out. So identifying the problems of the local people and then fixing these problems, that is what is value. I don't know your own definition of value, but that to me is value. Solving the problems of the local people, that to me is value. So I will just go on to the next person while we are still waiting for Mrs. Ifeyinwa to join our session. I'll just go over to you, sir. How should Nigerian startup balance compliance and innovation when building financial or tech products? I remember you talking about CBN and all their regulations. So how should Nigerian startup balance compliance and innovation when building financial or tech products?
Yeah, I think that's a very, 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 very good question. My day-to-day work, revolves around balancing this every single time. Because every time you wake up in the morning, you have very fantastic ideas. You want to build the next authentication system. You want to, allow people to pay without entering their PINs and everything. That's what we think about every morning. But, part of being mature in the startup space is to also understand that compliance is there for a reason. You're dealing with people's money. You don't want their money to get missing. You don't want to tell stories. You want people to see their money in their account at the end of the business day. Right? But to answer this question, I would like to, talk about a story for what happened to my co-founder is here. So we tried to build a nice offline card payment solution some years ago. I think this was early 2020. And us now, engineer is just I was fresh from my master's, he was fresh from his degree, we are building stuff. But then when it came to time to sell that particular product, we found out that we didn't have half the compliance there. So we burnt a lot of time building something that compliance, we should have, talk about the compliance first. So I think we should not see these two things as different things. We should see them as the same thing. It's a dance. It's not a battle. It's a dance. These two things have to dance together. They have to tango together. And every startup, especially in fintech, should take compliance first. When we learn after our experience in this first fintech product we tried to build, in this second one we're building now, the first thing we did was to hire a compliance officer. Let's not waste our time anymore. When we have an idea, before we say anything, before we push forward with actually writing code on the idea, we ask your compliance person, is this good? Can we go to jail because of this? How much can we pay? And to give an example of how expensive this can be, I don't know if anybody heard about Zap by Paystack. So Paystack launched Zap about 3 months ago, and within 1 week of launching Zap, federal government, CBN gave them a fine of I think 100 and something million naira immediately. They don't even give them a chance to even fly. If you mess up with anything compliant, and the CBN knows that and they can catch you by maybe you're defaulting by a rule on the other one, you can get very, very heavy fines. When we are getting we have in my startup we have 2 certificates at the moment. We have PCI DSS, which allows us to make card payments, and then we have NDPR because we deal with user data. When we are doing our NDPR certificate, one thing they said was, if you don't do this, you're liable to pay X amount of fine or go to jail. I'm not ready to go to jail. I didn't come to do startups to go to jail, I beg. So you understand there are very, very serious implications of not doing things like this. But even as we innovate and do this, obviously regulations change, right? Something that was not a regulation this year can become regulation next year. The advice I'll give to startups, which we take in our startup, is to build modular systems. And if anybody here is a developer here, when you're building things, don't make it a monolith. Try and decouple systems. So that if, for example, CBN comes up one day and tells you, okay, this cannot happen this particular way, you don't have to shut down your whole business, right? You can just turn off a particular module and leave others keep running. I think if anybody here is a developer and is technical, we'll call this like microservices. Try and separate this into different microservices so they are not tightly coupled together. To give a bit of an inside thing about how we handle our business, the way we wrote our code for our payment processor is such that if any of our banking partner goes down for 1 minute, we switch the other banking partner by switching an environment variable, because we understand that we're not here to play any games. You should be ready to turn off and turn on and be very, very, very flexible. So yes, and I think another way we should, I don't want to put it just on the fintechs as well. I think the central bank has a role to play on this, right? I feel there should be more dialogue between the central bank and then the fintechs on how we should path the way forward. I don't think central bank only should just sit down there on their high horse and make a lot of rules without trying to understand how those in fintech are trying to, build the next big thing. Because in the end, we're all trying to push Nigeria forward. We're all trying to bank the unbanked. We're all trying to make sure that businesses can focus on just being businesses and not worry about processing their payments. So I feel the federal government also has a way, or the CBN has a role to play on this. So in conclusion, I would say the most important thing to me, if a startup founder here, is to hire a compliance person. It's worth the headache you're going to save. So yeah.
So one of the things I see in the Nigerian sector, business sector, is one person tries to do it all. One person wants to be a project manager, one person wants to be a Q&A person, one person wants to be this and that, one person wants to be the CEO. At the end of the day, in all of this, you would be missing out one thing that will destroy your company. So I think from today henceforth, and as a startup, you should be thinking of balancing the equation in your startup organization. Get the necessary, it might cost a lot because you're startups. Even if you cannot get somebody, you can do more like an interim stuff, or maybe you can also get information. Equip yourself with information, because the Nigerian economy is not even smiling, one, and then these regulatory bodies are not even smiling. So every step you take, they are waiting to take you 10 times deeper. So please, I think the very first step is to get a compliance officer. So I think Mrs. Ifeyinwa is on the line right now. Hello, Mrs. Ifeyinwa, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Mrs. Ifeyinwa, can you hear us? Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. I can't hear anything. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Okay, go ahead. Hello, Mrs. Ifeyinwa, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Tunji, I can hear Tunji. Can you hear me? Hello? Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Tunji, I can only hear your voice. I can't hear Eke.
We are together. We are together. You can continue.
Okay, so I haven't heard any question. I think I'm supposed to hear her voice, right? Because I'm
Can
just
you
hearing
hear
your
me?
own voice.
Hello, good morning, ma. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we are together. You can continue. We are
Okay.
together, yeah.
So we'll just start. Welcome, ma. Thank you for joining us on this session.
Okay, so Eke, if you can hear me, because I haven't heard anything from you, I can hear Tunji.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Tunji, she's speaking.
I can
No,
hear
she's
you,
not speaking. You can
Mrs.
continue. We are all
Ifeyiwa.
hearing you.
Okay, so for me, one of the mistakes that most startups make in this part of the world is scaling too early. So what do we mean by scaling too early? I mean, you have an example where people, they will bring out the product, and just because maybe they have about 1,000 users, or maybe even 5,000 users. I mean, instead of concentrating on the product itself, they want to expand, And initially, when you're doing such a thing, expansion is not the key. The most important thing is to understand the products you're bringing out. You need to understand how it's going to affect the common man that needs it. Is it what is needed? I mean, are you in the right direction? Instead of just trying to, expand it. That's one of the shortcomings of startups. The second one is the poor financial discipline. When you're doing a startup project, you don't want to go into fundraising and then you leave the product itself. You should be able to, carry the startup itself. You need to know your numbers. So in that way, you're able to know, okay, for your cost of acquisition, that's one of the keys. Those are things you put into consideration when you're doing a startup. But a lot of us, we don't pay attention to that, and then we go into error. Another one is big governance. So what do I mean by that? If you don't have the right people at the helms of affairs, at the end of the day, you might just start up and within a few space of time, you're out of business. So you need to get the right people for whatever project it is that you're embarking on. Make sure that whoever is going to be part of your board, it's one of the right people. You understand what I'm saying? So those are if you can hear me, those are the weaknesses of such those are the mistakes that startups make when it comes to starting a project. So another one is about startup copying foreign, like how they say it, think globally, act locally. So when you're supposed to think globally, it means, okay, you go out there, you see things that are done. But when you come into your own country, you have to build based on your own culture. We have our own cultural behavior. We have our own uniqueness here. I mean, in Nigeria, you have to struggle with NEPA, right? If it's not NEPA, it is internet, Like I've been here since, I'm watching you guys. I heard people speaking, but you guys couldn't hear me. So these are peculiar issues in this part of the world. So as a startup person, you don't go to America and bring something from America and then come to Nigeria and just implement. It won't work that way. You have to find out what are the obstacles in Nigeria, how do you overcome them. We have infrastructural issues here. Those are things that you have to think about in order for you to be able to make your startup work in Nigeria. So for me, those are some of the issues. Then another thing is our payment system is quite different, So you need to know all of this for you to be able to bring it into play. Then you find, there's this thing about us. We expect people to behave in a certain way. I mean, if you're bringing a product to Nigeria and you see it work, let's say in UK, the average person in maybe Onitsha might not have the education for that kind of product. So you have to come down to the level of the people within your environment, the grassroots, because at the end of the day, you might wish that, oh, okay, this should go to a certain group of people. But the truth of the matter is that it is the common man, the everyday person that will patronize you. So as a startup person, those are the key things you should put into consideration. So for me, those are my thoughts. Then we should also, another thing that we should talk about is financial discipline. When it comes to adopting the models, yeah? We should talk about the financial discipline. Those are part of the issues. You should pay attention to your everyday activities. What are you bringing to the table? How does that affect the common man? How is that going to affect the product? So for me, those are key. Okay, so over to you. And then let me.
Thank you very much.
I'm not hearing anybody's voice. I don't know if you're hearing me.
No problem. Thank you so much. I don't know if you've gotten something or one or two from there. Me? Thank you very much, Mrs. Ifeanyiwa, for giving us that awesome, those things. Now, I will just bring everyone to speed so you understand the questions. We had to send the questions to her because of the network issues we are having. So her very first question was, what are the most common mistakes you have observed Nigerian startups make when trying to scale, and how can they be avoided? And then the next question is, how can founders avoid the trap of copying foreign startup models that may not fit the Nigerian or African market? And then the next one is, in today's high inflation and unstable macroeconomic climate, what strategies can startups use to build resilience into their business models? Now this brings us to something very relatable. A lot of people just go online and then copy something and then say, oh, I want to build this, without considering the Nigerian market. Let's not even go far, without even considering the local markets they are even functioning in. And this has led to a lot of crises in their businesses. It just goes and then it goes missing. So at the end of the day, the startup tends to lose out. So to summarize this whole session, sir, I will just ask you one very final question. What qualities do you believe will define the Nigerian startups that stand the test of time? In 1 minute, sir.
Okay. The best quality to consider with Nigerian startups that will stand the test of time is resilience. Resilience in business. How do you achieve resilience? Your financial, you have to actually prioritize your financial outlay by ensuring you have continuous revenue streams and multiple revenue streams. If you're able to do that, as well as be ready to change your strategies based on the realities of the economic circumstances, and be able to do that also very, very promptly, being agile to respond to market trends, that will help you be able to, build resilience in your business and withstand economic difficulties and uncertainties that we experience, particularly in Nigeria.
Thank you so much. So I would come to you very last time. In an economy that is dragging, we are dragging forward and they are dragging us back, where a lot of policies, like the tax policies that's coming up next year, that is very scary, and so many policies in the country. So the question is, what qualities do you believe will define the Nigerian startup that will stand the test of time, whether they are dragging us forward or dragging us backward?
I think my chief just mentioned very, very salient points. Flexibility is very important. You have to be very, very, very flexible in the different ways you deal with your different customers across different channels. You have to be very, very responsive to the market trends. You have to be responsive to the regulations that are set by the central bank and other regulatory bodies. Very, very importantly, you have to have access to capital. If you're just talking and you don't have money to back your ideas, you're not going to be able to compete favorably, when the different situations arise. My chief has just mentioned you have to be resilient. Our current startup, we've been building it for about 3 years now. It's not a smooth journey. There's ups and downs. You have to be very, very resilient. I don't even know, he's built his business for over 30 years, so I'm sure he has a lot of stories to tell about being resilient, understand? Then I feel you also have to have foresight. Foresight is very, very important. You have to see the regulation come before it comes. Whether you're going to build this foresight by knowing people that are in high places or by reading books or by seeing places, these things that happen, you have to have foresight. If not, you're going to be stuck on the back foot. Then you have to have what I call operational excellence. You have to know how to cut yourself lean. If you don't need something, don't spend on it. If you don't need an infrastructure, don't pay for it until you need it. And then the final point, which I believe is important, is that we all have to understand that we are building an ecosystem. You have to compete fairly. You have to compete fairly. Yeah, sorry. Yes. You have to compete fairly with everybody in the space. Every single fintech has to come to understand that if we are all in silos, we cannot push everything forward. We have to come together and build an ecosystem that, can thrive for us and other fintechs that come after us. I believe that this current crop of fintech should make things easier for others that want to enter into the market, so they don't have to go through, what we go through to operate at the moment. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, sir, for your insight. So in summary, number one, be very resilient and be ready to adapt. In a country where we have a lot of policies and laws that are coming up every single day, as a startup founder, you should be 10 times ahead. I don't know about you, but if I were a startup founder, with the new tax laws that will be taking place from next year, I should be able to research about it, go 10 times ahead of them. What are the things I need to put in place before next year? What are the things I need to do to safeguard? Trust me, a lot of businesses will go down next year. What are the things I need to put in place so my business can start the test of time? And then also in summer, if I were you, before you leave today, please have a handshake with these two very well experienced men, because you might not just be taking only the things that they have done over the years. You would also be tapping the anointing and the grace to stay longer in the Nigerian market. Thank you very much. It's been an interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, make it more generous. Make your applause more generous. No, back. You have to answer a few questions. Don't worry. Sit back. You're not leaving now. Big thank. I want to say a very big thank you to our panelists, the moderator, Ekemini Joseph, engineer Enugu Onyemelukwe, CEO of Halcon Engineering, the representative of Genesis Tech, Emeka Joseph Debo, right? Is that your name, sir? He gets in. Emeka Onyebuchi, all right, is representing our doom of the Genesis Tech Hub. Now, I'm sure you've learned a lot from these people, right? And you have questions. So this is the time you ask your question. Questions? All right, we'll have a hand up. Please, can you give her the microphone? Or give him the microphone, sorry. Sorry, ma'am. Sorry.
Well, I was just wondering whether I look like a man.
No, sorry. I think the suit confused me. Sorry,
yeah,
ma'am.
it's okay.
All right.
I'm Professor Victoria Chikodi Onu, the first female professor of creativity in Africa. I feel so sad. The Igbos say, idea about Kolo. And we know that creativity rules the world. What you've just been talking about, I've been sharing with my sister. That's what we've been talking all along as we were coming. We came all the way from Nsukka. We have lots and lots and lots of gifted, talented, and creative children. Beautiful ideas. How do they start? How? We're talking about, every day, tax. And just to, chip in, I got, pissed off, asking myself, in America, I've lived there briefly, they don't eat cow meat. I've been to Britain, I've lived there. They don't eat cow meat. We just came back from Malaysia some, months back. There was scarcely cow meat there. So who feeds them with chicken? Is it my late grandmother that has been giving them chicken? I came back here and I got a young, creative individual who said artificial insemination. And we started a project. And this man is ready to train the community in the East on how to raise birds, get fertile eggs. But we're looking for 5 million naira. It's sad. So how will these young people, we're selling our talents outside the country. We're losing them, the young ones. I have a program that I'm going to start running very soon. Going into the prison, because in Nigeria, where do we keep the gifted, talented, and creative people? In the cell. So I have a program for them, Life for Life. Give us something, and I will stand before any judge and say, release this young man. He's not as bad as the rest of us. So the question is, how? How do we encourage the young people? This doctor in the university is looking for 5 million naira. I don't have it. Muna Professor Munine. I don't have it. How? Thank you.
Okay.
So who's taking the question, sir?
Okay. It's really an unfortunate situation that is presently existing in Nigeria, whereby most of our research institutes and universities actually most times think that they can only have funds from overseas grants. But time has come, as she has said, those overseas grants are no longer very available. So we need to begin to hold our government accountable to implement deliberate budget provisions for research work in our institutions deliberately. We are talking of taxes. We hold our government responsible to budget for grants for startups. Like she has just said, 5 million naira is no money. It's nothing to even to private companies that can sponsor such grants. But then, the next thing that we need to also demand from the institutions is accountability. It's important that if a project is initiated and sponsored by government, there should be a framework to monitor that project and hold the outcome and the project managers accountable for a feedback that can be implemented and scaled up. This issue of research in the Southeast is an important asset that we have, natural asset that we have. The Igbos do a lot of research. They believe in exploration. There's no doubt about that. I know myself, for one, I grew up in that manner. It's true I ventured into construction, but if you had left me in my natural state, I'll be in the laboratory, whether it be mechanical or electrical or whatever laboratory, bringing out innovations. That's my natural stuff. So government being able to sponsor startups and research will make the difference, particularly regional or state governments. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, and then I also feel I 100% agree that the government should, because government is the first basis. But I also feel that private organizations have to open their eyes to R&D. You know, before we started the fintech arm of before we started our fintech company, one of the things that gave us the launchpad was Genesis had an R&D department. You know, we just came to the office and then we were just thinking about, okay, what's the next big thing we can build in Nigeria? Most private organizations should actually open their eyes to, you know, let's not just keep thinking about today. How can we actually change the way things are done for tomorrow? You know, most private organizations to start setting out some budgets to say, okay, how can we push our, not just us, but our ecosystem, you know, forward. But I 100% agree, must start with the government, because I believe that, for example, if the government says that, this is me thinking, right? If government says that if you have an R&D budget, you can write stuff from your tax, most people will do it, you know, because it's a business in the end. So I believe the government has to, you know, set the tone, and then more companies should, you know, take advantage of these opportunities when they arise.
All right. Do we have any other question? Okay. The last one, please.
Good morning again, or is it afternoon now, everyone? This question is directly for Mr. Onyebuchi. I got your name correct, right? Okay. So, my name is Adana, and I'm a designated compliance professional. So the discussion on compliance resonated with me quite deeply. And I would say, what is, you know, the fintechs that have gone there and are already in motion, what are they doing to encourage the younger ones? Because it's as if there is scarcity of information, and most organizations are not even ready to give just a little bit of the blueprint that they used. I remember when I worked with a startup, a fintech, and we needed to deploy a software for KYC onboarding. We sampled various softwares, but we couldn't get what we wanted. And I went about asking questions, but people were not ready to give information. It's as if, no, I got this and I'm not sharing it with you, so you don't come and compete with me. So if we're talking about, I'm very, very particular about this ecosystem, the Southeast and the South-South. So if we're ready to build, we should also understand that we should be able to share what we already know. Because in the end, a tree does not make a forest. So I'd like to know how we'll be able to push this information that is needed forward to get others, you know, moving. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think from your question, I can tell you're very, very informed. You know, before we started Transact, I was in Lagos for about 3 months to even understand. Like, you know, you've hit the nail on the head. You know, knowing how to write code is one thing, but knowing, for example, this is the regulation you need, this is how this works, the information is not out there. I had to meet people that had banks, I had to go and understand, you know, so it's not even out there. I understand what you mean perfectly. You can tell you actually built something in this space. The problem is that our ecosystem is a very competitive one. That's the number one problem. Because the truth is that people are very mindful of their profit margin.